Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Nick Wong, and I'm the Research and Projects Coordinator with the Invasive Species Council of BC. We're a collaborative-based organization committed to reducing the spread and impacts of non-native species within BC. Today, I'm joining you from Coquitlam, and I'm grateful to live and work on the unceded traditional territory of the Coquitlam First Nation. Thank you to everyone today for joining us for the webinar, co-hosted by the Integrative Vegetation Management Association of British Columbia and the Invasive Species Council of BC, entitled Formulation Basics, Tank Mixing and Common Issues, and Sprayer Cleanout. This webinar is approved in British Columbia for one continuing education credit towards pesticide applicator certification. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the IVMA and ISCBC website soon, but to qualify for the credit, please participate in the entire webinar, including the quiz at the end. If you have any questions about the credits, please contact Gwen Shrimpton at the IVMA. If you're experiencing any technical problems with Zoom, please write us a little note in the chat box and we'll see if we can assist you. So everyone's been muted off at the start here, so you should only be able to hear myself and the presenters. And sorry, just going to give a little Zoom housekeeping stuff here. So in Zoom, you have the option to select speaker view or gallery view at the top of your screen, and we recommend speaker view. If you do have questions come up during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Gavin, our speaker, will be taking some time at the end of the presentation to answer your questions. But if we do run out of time, we will get those questions to Gavin and get them back to you. If you do happen to see your question already typed in the Q&A box, you can click the thumbs up button to upvote that and bump it up the list. Excuse me. In the chat, there's also going to be a link for the quiz to take at the end of the webinar to obtain your CEC, and we'll also provide that link at the end, so don't jump off right away. So at this point, I'm pleased to give a warm welcome to Gwen Shrimpton, Executive Director of the Integrative Vegetation Management Association. And here you go, Gwen. Hope you all enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Nick. As Nick mentioned, this webinar is co-hosted by the IVMA and the Invasive Species Council of British Columbia. The IVMA is a recognized organization dedicated to the responsible practice of vegetation management throughout the province. Our membership represents diverse industries, including forestry, gas and electrical utilities, railways and highways, and invasive plant management. The IVMA is the credit coordinator for the Ministry of Environment Continuing Education Program for the recertification of pesticide applicators for the forestry, industrial vegetation management, including noxious weeds and aerial categories. You must be a member of the IVMA for us to track your credits. Information on this program can be found on our website at ivma.com. We plan to enhance the opportunities for obtaining credits by holding webinars with the ISC. As Nick mentioned, this webinar will qualify for one credit. You must provide us with your pesticide applicator certificate number when you registered for this webinar and stay for the entire presentation, including the quiz at the end, to obtain your credit. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for this webinar. He's going to be speaking on formulation basics, tank mixing and common issues, and sprayer cleanout. So I'm delighted to introduce Gavin Lunn, who is the Regional Account Manager for Ontario and Manitoba with Corteva Science. Agriculture was always a part of Gavin's life. He grew up on a cash crop and mixed farm family. In between semesters of post-secondary education in business and environmental science, he continued to work in agriculture for a large farm operation near Sparta, Ontario. After graduation, his love of agriculture brought him back to the field, where he found a job that suited his skill at Pioneer, where he worked in canola research. In his role at Corteva Agriscience, Gavin goes beyond providing simple recommendations to delivering full season solutions for his customers. He looks at soil sampling and analysis, providing fertilizer and seed recommendations, and building the right integrated pest management plan for the crop. When not working, Gavin enjoys spending time with his children in the great outdoors, probably near a lake where they can go fishing, or in winter, you can catch him zipping around on his snowmobile. Welcome, Gavin.
Well, thank you very much, Gwen. That's a great introduction, and thanks, Nick, as well. Great to be here. It's nice to have the industry and the stakeholders reach out and invite us to speak. So I'll open up my shared screen here, bring up the presentation. Oh, but I'm getting an error here, Nick. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Sorry, I'll sort this out momentarily.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, full screen there. Looks good, Nick?
Yeah, looking great.
Great. Yes, excellent. Wow, it's awesome to see the number of participants that have logged into this. 85 so far. This is my personal best for a Zoom webinar meeting, so thanks for making that happen. So like the introduction had, I'm going to speak on formulation and tank mixing basics and the importance of water quality. My contact information is available there. So welcome to Formulation and Tank Mixing Basics. On behalf of Corteva, thanks, and thanks for the introduction again. My name is Gavin Lunn. For the agenda today, it's going to consist of 3 modules. The first module will introduce everyone in the room to a common basic understanding of what a formulation is and key formulation types used in this area. The second module will focus on the education and the practice of combining formulations into one application via application equipment. Understanding of proper order of addition of formulations into application equipment and other key parameters like pH, turbidity, and hardness will be taught. For the third module, I'm going to focus on the sprayer cleanout procedure and recommendations. And then lastly, we'll have questions and comments from you. If we do run out of time, I'm available for follow-up questions at any time. Oops. So I always like to start presentations with a little photo collage of myself. You heard it in the introductions a little bit about myself, my family, and these photos really sum it up. And in the last year of COVID, the people in these pictures, well, they're everything. They're the people that I've been spending all free time with, investing in kids' future and their love of the outdoors. We're a big outdoors family, fishing, spending time in the forest, snowmobiling and such. And it's a little bit about me. So before I get into the meat and the potatoes of the presentation, just want to go through a couple pictures here. Do any of these photos look familiar to you? Have you had to clean up any of these? Of your sprayers, your nozzles? Well, we're going to learn today a little bit about why this happened, how to prevent it. But first, I want everyone to understand the basics about formulations. So Module 1, Formulation Basics. For the most practical purposes, the terms formulation and product can be used interchangeably. Here are some examples of formulations that we encounter every day, such as shampoo, toothpaste, paint, mouthwash, facial moisturizers, formulations that are part of everyday life. So what is a formulation? So formulations are a means to deliver an active ingredient to a specific target site in a usable form. Usable form, what does that mean? Usable form offers for the end user a variety of benefits depending on the finished product. For example, in the picture, for example, in the picture of the toothpaste on the previous slide, the fluoride is the active ingredient, but it's formulated to provide a nice minty flavor. However, let's apply the definition of formulation to our vegetation management products that you may be more common with. So active ingredient as it applies to vegetation management products means it has biological activity against a pest, in this case a weed or a tree. Understanding how a formulation works or is put into a usable form will help you understand how it will behave once it is diluted in water. So shown here are some of the vegetation management products that Corteva has. We have Garlon XRT and Garlon RTU containing the active ingredient triclopyr. And then we have Milestone, which is aminopyrrolide, and then Clearview, aminopyrrolide plus metsulfuron methyl. So formulation types, can be broken down into two tiers, and that we have solid formulation types and liquid formulation types. The most common ones are on this slide. So under the liquids, we have soluble liquids, and they get the abbreviation SL, suspension concentrates, which get the abbreviation SC, emulsifiable concentrates, EC. On the solid form, we have wettable powders, WP, and then water dispersible granules, WG or SG. Sometimes WDG can be used as an abbreviation as well. So we'll start with the SLs, soluble liquids. And soluble liquids, as the formulation type alludes to, is when the active ingredient is completely soluble. It's not a suspension in the water. So thus an SL is a water-based formulation type. As shown in the picture on the far left, it's the concentrated formulation. And in the middle, you can see the SL being added to the water. And then on the right picture,
Sorry, Gavin, sorry to interrupt. We're having a little bit of audio issue, kind of you cutting in and out a little bit, becoming a bit quieter and louder. Is there any chance you could maybe bump your mic settings up or?
Yes, just give me 2 seconds. Hey there, Nick. Is that a little bit better? I'll maybe speak more into the mic.
Yeah, that sounded better. Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, I'll focus on being a little bit closer here. So the last picture there is the SL formulation when it's completely dissolved in water, and you're going to be left with a clear solution. So the ECs, emulsifiable concentrates, they're another example of a liquid formulation type. They are designated by the 2-letter abbreviation EC, and unlike SLs, are not water-based. ECs are solvent-based formulation type. However, similar to soluble liquids, when formulated as an EC, they're fully soluble in an organic solvent. Thus, there is no suspended active ingredient particles in this formulation type. ECs also have surfactants added to the formulation. So you may be wondering, why would surfactants be added to ECs? And the surfactants are added to deliver the active ingredient in a usable form. There's a little hint on the slide there that shows when added to water, the formulation is dispersed as small emulsified oil droplets. Well, it would be very difficult for this to occur if surfactants were not added. Quite simply, it's because water doesn't mix with oil, doesn't mix very well. So with that, we've discussed the two formulation types where an active ingredient is fully soluble in the concentrate. We'll jump to the third that I had featured, and that's suspension concentrate, or SC. So they're the third that we'll learn about, and designated by the abbreviation SC. SCs are a water-based formulation type, in that water is the continuous phase. Active ingredients which have a very low water solubility are often formulated as an SC. Since their solubility in water is very low, the active ingredient particles form a suspension or dispersion. In order for the particles to remain suspended during storage and not form a sediment layer at the bottom of the container, gels are added to the formulation. The types of gels that are added work much in the same manner as gels used to increase the viscosity or thickness of many of the foods that we see in the grocery store, ice cream, sauces, and beverages. So to sum the liquid portion up, SL, EC, SCs are the three most common formulation types, but sometimes a dry formulation is necessary, and we'll talk about that now. So with the WGs, or sometimes known as the WDGs, they're a water dispersible granule. They are designated by the two-letter abbreviation WG most commonly, where the active ingredient formulated may have physical properties that limit their technical feasibility to be formulated into one of the three liquid forms. And what I mean by that is, if the active ingredient was to degrade or break down when it's in cohabitation with a liquid in the three liquid groups, then that active ingredient wouldn't have good solubility, it would start to break down, and we just wouldn't have a very stable product. So that's where the water dispersible granules come in. They're very stable and can be stored for a really long period of time. So in these formulations, the active ingredient is blended with inert material, and then they're milled to a fine particle size. After blending, in the production process, they add a small amount of water, and it agglomerates the powder, and then through the various processes, a granule is formed. When the granules are added to water, water enters the pores of the granules and begins to break it apart. And when we get into the next module, we'll talk about some of the watchouts when you're mixing these. So formulation watchouts with the dries, pre-slurrying these mixes is very helpful. Warmer the water, the better. And quite often with professional vegetation managers, they don't have really active and really powerful agitation systems on their sprayers, depending what they are, you know, a backpack or an ATV sprayer. So having that pre-slurry to disperse that evenly is critical. With the SLs, mixing them thoroughly in springtime, and product separation issues can occur with glyphosate in the hot summer months. And what's happening there is the surfactant is going to separate out of the mix, but quickly shaking them up before use can take care of that. With the SLs, one watch out is also to be careful when you're mixing like two salt-based active ingredients, and those could be 2,4-D in the Enlist system and glyphosate. And the salt just, it needs time separately to properly mix. Okay, module 2 into tank mixing and clean out basics. So with tank mixing basics, applying a small amount of active ingredient across a specified area land, such as an acre or hectare, requires care during application to ensure uniform application. So earlier we talked about the definition of a formulation. Let's further define what a tank mix is. So now we're looking at a tank mix being a process of mixing several crop protection products into one mixture to be used for application. So why are tank mixtures used? Well, it's the convenience and increasing spectrum of pest control, the convenience of reducing the number of passes across the field, hours for the applicator, health and safety costs, diesel, wear and tear on equipment. Because quite simply, applying more than one product at one time increases the spectrum of control, and it's cheaper. We can mix various modes of action to reduce the onset of geez, I've lost the word for for resistance, sorry. So in the next slide here, we'll talk about what parameters are to be considered when preparing a tank mixture. So first and most important step when preparing a tank mix, of course, we all know, is to read the SDS and the label thoroughly. The label is the law, and ensuring proper PPE is used throughout the entire preparation. And we want to consider the following parameters before preparing our tank mix, and these parameters would be the amount of water initially in the application tank, because a low water volume initially could cause precipitation on some of the WGGs. So if we have an extremely low amount of water in there and we add our slurry, there is an opportunity to come out of suspension there. So it's nice to have a greater amount of water when we start mixing to ensure dispersion. Order of addition, WAM legs. We'll talk about WAM legs a little bit more in the next slide, of when to apply what type of product, and then also if we're adding anti-foam products or liquid fertilizer and such. The rate of addition of crop protection products. We need to ensure that each crop protection product has adequate time in the mix before the next product is added. And looking at water quality, pH, water hardness, and turbidity, of course. Because water quality can affect not only the physical compatibility, but the biological efficacy. These products can be quite expensive due to time and the products themselves. So taking care of these watchouts up front is really important. And the temperature, with some products, cold water can reduce dispersion, and dispersion time when you're mixing those products. If the water is really cold, it can increase the amount of time you need to make that tank mix. And total water volume, of course, we need to be cognizant of that. So WAM legs, I'm sure you individuals have seen this when you're talking about tank mixing and the order of addition. So for W, we got your wettable powders, and then with the A, we have agitate and anti-foam, and with M, we have our microcapsule suspensions, and L, we have liquids and solubles. E is emulsifiable concentrates. G would be your glyphosates, and S would be your surfactants. And then of course, the last piece is the remaining water to make up your full tank mixture volume. So to add a little fun slide in here when talking about water quality, if you're a child of my age, and this was definitely one show that was on TV for me, The Simpsons, and you know, the residents of Springfield had a saying, if it's brown, drink it down. If it's black, send it back. But I'm telling you, for the case of mixing herbicides, if it's brown or black, please send it back. So let's talk about water quality a little bit here. So with water quality, we all know the implications of using a water source like the one pictured there. That water, who knows what's in it, right? But quite often it's not always possible to be able to get a water quality source for tank mixing like that clear, perfectly drinkable, potable glass there. Because with industrial vegetation management, quite often they're pulling water from sources like this. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the watch outs with pH, turbidity, and hardness, and some of the things you can do in the field to prevent any issues. So hard water, we'll start with that. Hard water can decrease efficacy. Higher the hardness, the quicker the herbicide active will dissociate, resulting in reduced efficacy. The pH of the water solution can also exaggerate the impact of hard water on the herbicide's activity. So this results in the separation of the herbicide into negative ions, which combines with the cations of the hard water, tying up that active ingredient. One way to help with this is the addition of ammonium sulfate. It reduces that interaction, and the sulfate will bind with the positive ions in the water, and the ammonium binds to the herbicide, which actually helps the product penetrate the plant cell membrane. Turbidity. Turbid water is a name used to describe a water source that has suspended particles, which could be soil, organic matter, algae, runoff, any type of contamination. And pesticides have the ability to bind to those particles in the water source, which ties up the active ingredient and doesn't make it available, which is going to decrease the efficacy of the product. All the active ingredients can be affected by turbidity at different rates. Two watch outs that I would tell you right off the hop about, glyphosate and trifluopyr have been known to tightly absorb the particles. Therefore, with them, it's extra important to have clean water. So water quality, what can be done? Ensure your water source is free from sediment. Any amount of sediment can be problematic. If you visually see particles, consider a different water source. Some hard water and pH testers can be bought from local pool stores. In the case of hard water, I would consider anything over 1,000 ppm to be very hard. And that's when you should start to look at using AMS or some type of water conditioner. For pH, a lot of IVM herbicides are weak acids, and a pH over 8 would be too high, and you should consider a different water source. And if you are pulling your water source from that dugout or picture I had in the slide previous, you can install micron of different size filters on your water pumps to filter out the particulate. But one thing I'll show you here, and hopefully it shows up, is when I'm out in the field doing training with customers or even tank mixing to do my own small plot trials, I have a very simple water test kit that's just available at any pool, hot tub supply store. It's pH strips, water hardness indicators. They're quite easy to use and quick. And then I got the little jar as well. I hope you can see that. Carry this little jar around with me, keep the outside as clean as possible. And I'll just look at the water source that I want to use. If I have any sediment inside or visible particulate, then I'm going to want to try screen as much of that out as possible. So just a slide, the next couple slides here, I'm going to show some pictures about pH and how they can reduce product efficacy. In this picture, those first three clumps there were with one water source, and then the picture on the far right was a different water source. And you can see how the pH had affected the product efficacy there. What can also happen with worst case scenario on tank mixing, you got agglomeration, incompatibility or improper mixing order, and that particulate from when the product is gelling out, it's going to clog screens and nozzles, create a problem at the time of application, but then also when you're done and you look in your sprayer, it's going to create a whole new problem where you got to clean that up. Creaming or separation, this results in uneven application of the active ingredient across the field. And with some of today's products where the amount of active ingredient is so low, you can see really detrimental results by having that active ingredient loaded up in one section of that tank mix. So we'll look through some examples here, talking about WAM legs, order of addition, and what could go wrong if we get out of that. So with this one, the photos I'll show in the next slide, doing a jar test. It's a scaled down version of the tank mixture you're hoping to prepare. Instead of preparing 1,200 gallons, for example, you could prepare a quart size mixture, combining each product in direct proportion to the scaled down volume. So the first example here, we got two wettable granules, our AMS and EC and SL, adjuvant, and the remaining water. So in this example, it's important to take time in between those two WGs. You need to pause between adding those to get that full dispersion. So with pictures attached here, this is the best case scenario, starting with our water volume, addition of our first WG, give it some time, add our second WG, and we have what appears to be a nice homogeneous mixture. You can see there's no kind of phase separation or settling out of any product. Addition of our AMS solution, the EC, and then the SL, and then the adjuvant. And our final tank mix looks great. We're ready to go to the field or right of way, whatever it may be, and spray. So let's look now at what if we were in a rush and immediately began adding the AMS solution, the EC, the SL, and adjuvant right after adding the dry formulations. We'll see that in this final tank mixture, we're going to start to get separation out of the dispersible granules. So we're going through here in the same steps. We're not spending the right amount of time. And after rushing that tank mix with putting the AMS and the EC and the SL in without waiting time between the WGs, we're going to see that final tank mix solution where we're going to end up with particulate on the bottom of the tank. So why do you clean your sprayer? Do you clean your sprayer to get rid of the deposits in the tank? We clean our sprayer to get rid of deposits in the inline filters, and we clean our sprayers to get rid of product that's remaining in nozzle bodies. So the reasons, we know the reasons why we clean our sprayer. We want to prevent any cross-contamination from a previous application to a new application. Maybe we've been changing the area or the style of spray we're doing. We're going from a selective broadleaf application to a total vegetation control scenario. And cleaning sprayers is just part of preventing damage to your sprayer as well. Gaskets, pumps, and filters. Additionally, cleaning the sprayer is super important. As I mentioned earlier, with some of the products that are available in the market, we're looking at 5 to 10 grams per hectare as being the amount of active ingredient we need to see results. So you can see in that picture there, that streaking and striping that's going down the field, and quite often that can be caused by a boom section being contaminated by a previous product, and just that minor amount of residue going through can cause those problems. And with that picture on the right, we can see just the damage from having that contamination. Oh, so we talked about formulations, tank mixing, order of addition. But if you look at a lot of chemical labels, you're going to notice that there's so many different clean out methods. And here's a bunch that are copy and pasted here from different products. One product has 5 steps, another would have 6. There's one with 7. And I think this is the worst one I found. It's got 11 different procedures to follow when you're cleaning out your sprayer and tank mixing equipment. So why and how there's so many different methods when it comes to cleaning out? It's because all active ingredients have different physical properties. All those different physical properties we talked about in the first part of formulations. So that's why we got to follow the label for the different cleaning required per product. So daily clean out suggestions. So this is fairly general information, but can be found through a lot of resources, but more than likely also with resources you get with your sprayer or from your supplier. So daily, we're going to check the spray tank, inline filters and other parts, draining any leftover product from the tank itself, flushing every part of that application equipment as possible. So the end caps, the booms themselves, all hosing. And it's even cleaning the outside of the sprayer is quite important as well, especially on a boom sprayer where you would have possible drift that could deposit on the implement itself. And don't let the spray system and tank dry without clean out after the last application of the season. If you have any deposit or gunk in there, the easiest time is to clean it out immediately. If you let it dry, you're going to just create a lot more work for yourself. And if it does dry, I even have a horror story of myself where I used a dry tank and the applicator previous had used 2,4-D in it, and then I made a tank mix of straight glyphosate in it, and glyphosate's got an amazing ability to extract anything that's left over in a spray tank. I went out and sprayed some soybeans, and the result was not pretty. So with that, is the end of the 3 modules there. I hope the attendees here learned a couple new things. And if we have time, welcome any questions. I didn't really look at my time there, Nick, but we're at 12:40. So I think we have some time, right, to take some questions.
Totally, yeah, ample time here. Thanks so much, Gavin, for that excellent detailed presentation. Love the incorporation of the humor. Helps with all the Zooms we're all doing. Apologies for anyone who's experienced some of the intermittent audio issues, but yeah, I think we had a great presentation there. So yeah, Steve's leading the way with 5 questions here. So I'll start from the top. Okay, here we go. How much agitation is necessary? Is mechanical agitation necessary, and how low can the liters per hectare be?
Okay. The amount of agitation is going to depend on like sprayer type for sure, and also the time that you expect it to be in suspension. Is mechanical agitation necessary, and how? So mechanical agitation is not necessary. If I was to do a backpack application, I know that it wouldn't have the ability to agitate, and I could get away with it, knowing that I would apply that tank mix fairly quickly. What is the suggested rate of application for AMS? Can we use this with any herbicide? AMS is compatible with a lot of herbicides. That's best to talk to your chemical representative in the area. If there is that aren't, the suggested rate of application, I have that. I'm wondering if it's close to my desk here. I have that nearby. Steve, if I could get your contact info, I would send that out to you. Mike culture hardness, calcium carbonate equivalent as shown on water analysis, less than 1,000. Less than 1,000 ppm would be okay. That's getting into the hard territory. Mike, if I were in an application scenario where I was doing low water volumes, I'm thinking about spot spraying or aerial, where you do have very low application volumes. The cost of AMS to fix that water hardness issue or to use a conditioner like Crimson would be so minimal because of the low water volumes, then I would just do it. Even though you're just at the territory of very hard, I would use it. It's a small insurance. But on the flip side, if you were doing a hose and handgun application at 1,000 liters per hectare, that is an incredible amount of water to have to treat with AMS or to use a product like Crimson, and then it can get quite expensive. So I would say that depends on your application equipment. Another one from Steve, does reducing the amount of water with the application increase the efficacy of the herbicide, such as knockdown or tolerance to rain? Well, herbicides are affected by water volume in different ways. Glyphosate, for example, prefers to have much lower water volumes when applied, because that's an increase in the dose that's getting onto the plant, whereas Garlon XRT or other selective broadleaf herbicides, coverage is the key, and to get coverage is where we need higher water volumes to carry that. So such as knockdown or tolerance to rain. Tolerance to rain, I believe that's just going to be tied to your rain fast on your label. So find out what the rain fast is. If the product recommends a surfactant is going to help keep that product where you want it to be. Okay, one from Laura. I have an old dormancy oil formulation that has separated out some solids. Is it still effective? Thanks. If it's a Corteva based product, let me know what product it is and I'll look into it. We deal with this every year where someone finds a jug and there's barely a label still left on it and they're wondering, like, does it work or not? Quite often we will, if it's a situation like that you have, we'll mix it as well as possible and do a test strip. But I'd be interested to hear which one it is. Oh, another question about water hardness. What parameter, ppm, did you indicate was too high? 1,000 parts per million is too high, and that's going to be where we really want to look into using a conditioner or AMS. What does SN stand for in the Liberty 150 SN product? Glufosinate ammonium. I've seen SL on some formulations, which I assume is soluble liquid, but I am not sure about SN. Hey, Dan, completely honest, I know of glufosinate, but I don't use it, and I don't know the answer to that. Okay, question from Bruno. I use Gateway adjuvant and found that the foam creates precipitation in mixing glyphosate or 2,4-D. What happened in this case? Well, I suspect a few things could have happened. If order of addition was followed, you may still see some foam, but you shouldn't have had a precipitate. I'm going to take a stab at that and think that glyphosate went in before the 2,4-D and there's a salt issue there. I would like to follow up on that one though. Oh, summertime applications. Does time of day or temperature affect the solutions? Oh, yes, absolutely. There's a lot of things that come into play with that. Some herbicides need active growth, and they work best at certain times of day for spray deposition. The one that's, and that can be species dependent. So in Ontario, we have, there's a couple. I can't think of the name for some reason. But anyways, morphologically and the structure of some weeds at night, they'll actually change their leaf orientation. Where if you were to spray at night or not during active growing periods, they, by not having that good leaf orientation, they will, you won't get good spray deposition. Velvet leaf is the weed that I'm thinking of. If you see pictures of velvet leaf at nighttime, it's actually changed its leaf orientation. So unless it's a soil applied herbicide, we need that that spray mixture to deposit on our leaf surface. And time of day does affect some herbicides more than others. Question about green earth horticulture oil and lime sulfur dormant spray kit. It's the lime sulfur component that is separated. Oh, that was in response to your separation. I'm sorry, I don't know about that product. Question about water turbidity. Does the type of particle, soil versus algae, reduce herbicide effectiveness more, or does size of the particle play a bigger role? I don't know the answer to that, other than turbidity is straight up going to reduce herbicide effectiveness more with some active ingredients than others. I talked about glyphosate and triclopyr being the biggest watchouts for that. My gut feeling there, Isabel, is that soil and algae and all types of particulate are going to affect the active ingredients relatively the same. Question on there about what is the best herbicide for use on Brassina Shredberry? I have not heard of that. Does that sound like a Western Canada specific thing, or what would be the generalized name for that? Not sure. Question there for, can we use injection modules with mechanical agitation by using pre-slurries? Example, 50% water with WG and SC. With that, in Ontario and Manitoba, a lot of my applicators using Clearview, for example, WG, are using injection-based systems. I'd be curious to hear what type of system you have there, Steve. If you want to call and talk about that, we can compare some notes. Oh, okay, there's a response to the Brassina Shredberry, Western Canada aquatic weed. Well, if it's aquatics, that's going to be tough to have a herbicide approved to be used over water. I don't think I can provide a solution for that. So I think Nick, we've chopped through a bunch of those.
We definitely have. Yeah, thank you very much for providing some responses, and well, any sort of other questions we can potentially follow up with. So I just want to make a note that the quiz that I mentioned earlier will be open only until about 10:30. So you have to complete that to gain your CEC continuing education credit. So unless there's any more questions that fly into the Q&A box, I'd like to thank you very much, Gavin, for sharing your expertise with us today, and to you as well, Gwyn, and on behalf of the ISCBC and the IVMA, and to all those that are listening, thanks very much. So we'll be sending out a link to a short evaluation survey as well to all the participants. So please do fill it out so we can get your feedback and ideas for future webinars. And if you're not already a member of IVMA or ISCBC, please check out the links in the chat to learn more.
Great. Thanks a lot, Nick. Thanks, Gwen. Thank you, everyone else.
That's great. Thanks so much, everyone.